Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. Isn't that a great title? A few years ago, I started using encourager of souls, and I'm absolutely delighted by that invitation from the universe, that I get to encourage you. I get to encourage your soul. I get to help you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. And I am so deeply grateful. And if you're wondering how I do this, I offer one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a whole lot of classes. I love getting to teach and facilitate, and I have new classes every 6 weeks or so. The roster is always changing. My classes are almost always small in size, anywhere between 4 and 10 people. So if you do choose to register for one of my classes, you will have a very intimate, inspiring, and supportive experience. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, where you can also sign up for my daily inspiration email blast. And I'll send you an inspiring email every weekday. So lots of ways that we can connect. But for now, the angels and I are here to help bring to you soothing, comforting, light-filled energy, so that we can keep you company for the next hour or so, while you're drifting off to sleep, or perhaps you're listening during your waking hours and you're going about your day. So this podcast is an unlikely mashup of two of my favorite forms of self-care. The first is connecting with the angels. I love the angelic energy. It is so soothing and filled with love. And it always helps me come to center, knowing that I am supported and loved. And this is what I want to share with you, because we all have angels. And they're non-denominational, so they're not affiliated with any specific religion. But I believe that divine love is available to all of us, and when we open to it, when we allow ourselves to receive it, it really brings all kinds of blessings to us. So that's my first favorite form of self-care, is hanging out with the angels. And my second is sleep podcasts. I listen to a sleep podcast every night. I do listen to this one, so I'm fortunate that my own podcast helps put me to sleep. A little pat on my own back. High five to the angels. Well done, team. And I also listen to other sleep podcasts, including Sleepy Bookshelf, a podcast called Sleepy by Otis Gray, another podcast called Get Sleepy. So I love falling asleep to the quiet murmurs and soft conversation in my ears as I drift off. It really helps me shift from my waking consciousness into that beautiful mystery of sleep. And that is why I have created this podcast for you. So perhaps you're new to the world of sleep podcasts and or the angels. So I just want to let you know that there's nothing to it. Just listen and let the love come streaming in. For me, with my sleep podcast listening, I crawl on into bed. I love bedtime. I love the feeling of the soft pillows and the covers. And I put in earbuds so I can sleep with them. They don't bother me. And I turn on one of my sleep podcasts. And I typically listen at a volume lower than I would if I were perhaps listening to an audiobook or something. Because I don't want it to be really loud and obvious. I want to have to reach a little bit, because then it makes it easier for me to drift off. And I use a sleep timer. So almost all of your podcast apps have sleep timers, as do most of our phones. So I usually set the sleep timer to turn off after the end of the episode. And at some point in the night, my earbuds fall out and I find them the next morning. I also use sleep podcasts when I wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know why. I have one of those internal clocks that typically says hello around 2 or 3 a.m. And if I can't just drift off to sleep again, I'll put on a sleep podcast, because that's much better than laying in bed bemoaning the fact that I can't go back to sleep. At least if I'm listening to something, my mind has a chance to drift off. So my hope is that this podcast will serve you in whatever way works best for you. Whether you're awake and going about your day, or whether you're ready to go into a restful state of slumber. So to begin, well, we've already begun, I guess. So my invitation to you is to cozy on up and snuggle on in and get comfortable in whatever way works best for you. And I invite you to take some nice deep breaths in and out. And while you focus on your breath or focus on my voice, I'm going to call the angels in. They are already here, but I love the ritual of sharing them with you. So beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. I ask that you spread a blanket of love in service to each of our beloveds listening now. I ask that you bring waves of healing, waves of light. I ask that you help clear from them anything that is not serving their highest and best good, anything that does not belong to them. And so, dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and out. And imagine, allow it to be so, that the angels are bringing to you a sphere of soft, pink light. This sphere is large enough to include you and all that you love. The people, the animals, the places in nature, that this sphere of light, it can be as immense as you want it to be, or as cozy as you will prefer. Just imagine that you are in this beautiful sphere of divine angelic light. And this light brings to you an energy field that is so profoundly supportive and allows you to come into vibrational alignment with the beauty of your true spirit. You know, so often in our earthly lives, we pick up energies, thought forms, experiences that are not really ours. And there is something about coming into this divine light that allows us to clear our metaphoric hard drives in a wonderful way. You know, when you can upgrade your operating system or defrag your hard drive, things just seem to work more smoothly. Well, we can do this with ourselves too. So you just breathe and allow the light to flow to you now. Your beautiful team of angels, they are with you now. And they know what is going on in your life, and they know what is in your heart. And so they bring to you these soothing, light-filled energies and prayers in service to your journey. So you just breathe and allow yourself to metaphorically float in these energies. I sometimes feel them like an expanding balloon in a really sweet way. It's always so fascinating to me that the light knows what is needed. The light with a capital L. That I don't always have to direct it and tell it what I need. It already knows. And the beautiful, greater expanse of all that we are, our greater spirit, it knows as well. So all your prayers, your intentions, your desires, they are received by a universe that loves you. And beautiful blessings, sparks of inspiration, miracles, grace, and healing are already seated upon your path. You don't have to strain or focus so hard all the time because you are a vibrational being, and the authentic essence of your vibration is leading the way. You are a beloved of God. You are born of the breath of God, that is you. And you are a blessing here on earth. You carry wisdom and love in your heart that makes this world a better place. You are precious in this world, and I am so deeply grateful for this opportunity to remind you of this now. So allow yourself to breathe in and out, and allow the love of your angels to help bring soothing, calming energy to you and your body. Allowing yourself to drift off whenever you are ready. And there's no hurry because we're going to be with you. This episode will run an hour long, so you have plenty of time. And if an hour isn't enough time, there are lots more episodes. So we'll be with you as long as we are needed. And so just allow yourself to receive this beautiful greeting of light and joy from your angels who love you. And you curl on up, get yourself all cozy, and while you rest, your angels will be with you. And I'm going to ramble our way into some stories and sharing with you. So for this episode, I thought we could return to the world of TV Guide in November of 1979. We went through the first part of this TV Guide a couple episodes ago, but I left us off in Tuesday morning. I mean, that's still several more days of programming that we can go through. And so I thought we would just pick up and go from there. For those of you keeping track, this is The Issue with Stephanie Powers and Robert Wagner, the co-stars of Heart to Heart, on the cover. And we're going to pick up on Tuesday morning. So just to set the tone, I would be 17 years old here. I would be in my senior year of high school, which I hated, and likely had quite a few sick days because I really didn't want to go to school. So I may have likely been watching during the daytime hours. This was the era before VCRs, so you either had to watch it when it aired or you missed it until rerun season. For the purposes of this journey into the Wayback Machine, I will just imagine that I'm home in my fuzzy pink bathrobe. I have the house to myself because my parents are at work and my brother and sister are at school or wherever they would be. And I have the house to myself, which I loved. And so it means I have dominion over the television. So let's see what we would watch, what our options would be. So in all reality, if I'm home from school, I am not awake in the early morning hours. I am probably in bed until about 10 or 11. But I will just do a quick scroll to see if anything is compelling. We have things like Good Morning America and the Today Show, which I'm sure I never saw until I was in my adult life. And there are plenty of reruns of things like Bewitched and Sanford and Son, Dr. Kildare, Hollywood Squares, The Gong Show, which I don't know if I watched at that age, but I do remember watching The Gong Show at some point, Phil Donahue, and other shows like that. There's an ad here for Mike and More, which is the Mike Douglas show, and Jane Fonda puts Mike through the paces, plus co-hosts Kate Jackson and Andrew Stevens. So I'm assuming this is at the height of Jane Fonda's workout videos. How many of you remember her in her teeny tiny leotard and tights, teaching us how to work out. I certainly had that video, but that would be later because I don't think we had a VCR at this time. But I did do the Jane Fonda workout probably with every other adult female in the country. Ryan's Hope was the soap I loved, so for sure I would be awake by Ryan's Hope. Let's see what else we have. All My Children. I don't know that I was watching All My Children by this point, but I was an ABC soap girl. Now we get into the afternoon programming. Merv Griffin from Atlantic City. Guests include opera singer Robert Merrill, actor Dudley Moore, comedian Nancy Parker, and singers Grace Jones and Clint Holmes. A very eclectic panel. And then on Mike Douglas, again, we already talked about this, Jane Fonda. And Hollywood Squares is going to be on. Then we have a multiple page spread ad for Jell-O. How to give your special meals even more bounce. And I'm just going to skip over that because Jell-O for me has never been a compelling food option. I've eaten it, but it's not a food that I ever have to have again. Then we have lots and lots of reruns of things and talk shows, but let's keep going. I don't know how many of you remember the last episode where we talked about Sally Field being listed as Burt Reynolds' girlfriend. So she had not really come into her own at that point, according to the press at least. But now we have an ad for Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds, macho man, Hollywood's hottest he-man and the women in his life, and college for senior citizens. So he gets to be the macho man and the hottest he-man, and Sally Field just gets to be his girlfriend. Don't get me started on that. That's just crazy. Okay, but we'll keep going. So now we're coming to prime time on Tuesday nights. And it was a big night for television. On the ABC block, you have Happy Days, followed by Angie, followed by Three's Company, and then Taxi, and then Heart to Heart. I guarantee you we were watching that entire block. I do not feel that my parents would have been at all interested in these sitcoms, but they would have let us watch it. I think they would have watched Taxi, but for sure Heart to Heart, and I for sure would have watched Happy Days. But on CBS, we have The Seekers, which is a 4-hour adaptation of John Jake's novel. I really liked those back in the day. I think I read them, and I also would have watched this at some point. And it's with Randolph Mantooth, who I always thought was adorable. He was Johnny Gage in Emergency. And he also was on the soap Loving for a little while. Also airing is Sheriff Lobo and BJ and the Bear, which I don't think I've ever seen an episode of. But now we get to the star of Tuesday night, Happy Days. So Howard, played by Tom Bosley, is host of his lodge's burlesque show. But not everything comes off, although the star comic Irv Benson arrives. The rest of the troupe gets snowbound in Buffalo. Well, that just sounds like that'll be an amazing episode. Said with sarcasm. I love how they write up these little synopses. On one of the independent stations, The Graduate is airing. And then there's the show Angie with Donna Pescow, which I seem to recall. Oh, because her boyfriend was played by Robert Hayes, who I always thought was kind of cute, if you remember him from the Airplane movies. Three's Company, Jack, played brilliantly by John Ritter, goes camping with an aspiring actress who thinks he's a film director and has her ticket to Hollywood. And Suzanne Summers is still on, so Suzanne Summers has not yet left the series. Then later in the evening on Taxi, The odds are even, but the cabbies bet heavily on Alex, Judd Hirsch, in contest with Louie, Danny DeVito, to see who can haul the most money during an 8-hour tour on the streets. I don't remember that specific episode, but I've seen all of the Taxi episodes. I loved that show. And then on Heart to Heart, the murder of a prostitute. Jennifer, once interviewed for an article, puts the hearts on the trail of a killer. Okay, this is too dark. Okay, never mind. Just let's assume that, the hearts put the kibosh on a bad guy. There you go. Yay. Now in the 11 o'clock hour, which I would probably still be awake at that point, being a teenager, Love American Style is on in syndication. And if you're old enough to remember Love American Style, the theme song is probably now playing in your head, and I'm sorry about that. On Johnny Carson, we have Sidney Goldsmith. I don't know who that is. Bert Convy, who I remember. And then there's lots of good programming in syndication. Let's see who's on tomorrow with Tom Snyder. Ooh, a discussion of sexual attitudes. Okay, I don't know what that was, but that certainly sounds very titillating for 1979. Okay, let's go to Wednesday afternoon. And I should mention that this week in the 3:30 afternoon slot, they are running the miniseries Roots again, which was such a powerful program. It really shifted the conversation we were having in the country at the time. So I really want to acknowledge that. And it really used to be that the 3:30 spot was an important one because that's when kids came home from school. So they often were showing after school specials and things like that. So I would imagine that the schools might have assigned the watching of Roots as an assignment because it was an important program. So in addition to Roots, we've got the talk shows. So on Merv Griffin, the guests include Debbie Boone, Henny Youngman, Phyllis Newman, and some disco dancers. I should name them in case any of you would know them: Jimmy and Jody King and Vicky Gold Levi. Now, again, if you're of that age, you know that Debbie Boone sang You Light Up My Life, which was the most popular song for quite a while. So much so that most people were traumatized from hearing it so much. But that was her claim to fame. And she's Pat Boone's daughter. And I should also say she is a well-rounded human being. I just mean at that time we knew her for this song and being Pat Boone's daughter. On Mike Douglas, oh my gosh, they have Aretha Franklin, which I'm sure would have been amazing, and comic Jeff Altman and Chad Everett, who I thought was very handsome, and more Jane Fonda, where she demonstrates disco exercises. Right on. I would have for sure been watching Mike Douglas. Okay, so let's go to Wednesday prime time now. There is a special Jacques Cousteau, and I don't know how you felt about it, but anytime there was a Jacques Cousteau special on, we were watching it. He really helped us better understand what was happening in the ocean. His programs were always so beautiful to watch. So Cousteau's research ship Calypso visits the Red Sea for an investigation of the unpredictable and fearsome shark. I'm sure that this whole topic was fueled by Jaws. Then there's the show Real People, which was sort of a news magazine kind of show that I don't know that I ever watched. Visits to a wrestling school, an opera house in the Mojave Desert, a high-rise funeral home, and a beauty contest for pigs. Also an interview with a man who hypnotizes lobsters. Again, what's not to love about that? But I wouldn't have watched it. I mean, just the hypnotized lobsters. I don't know what he hypnotizes them to do, but okay. Then there's a special on Senator Edward Kennedy, which my parents would have probably wanted to watch. But opposite that is a special 2-hour episode of 8 is Enough, which for sure I would have wanted to watch. So the Bradfords are going for an unforgettable adventure in Hawaii. So it says, the entire Bradford clan flies to Hawaii with eccentric Aunt Vivian, who has secret plans for a special family reunion. I for sure would have watched that. And also airing opposite of our brilliant 8 is Enough Goes to Hawaii program is a National Geographic special, The Mystery of Animal Behavior. I also always loved National Geographic. Also an episode of Different Strokes where Drummond, played by Conrad Bain, decides to drop adoption proceedings because of, quote, cousin Jethro's faked proof of guardianship over Arnold and Willis, the second of 2 parts. Yeah, I used to watch that show too. Okay. In prime time, they are doing a special, The Best of Saturday Night Live, with this week's host, Madeline Kahn, who was so frickin' funny. It has Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Jane Curtin, Garrett Morris, Bill Murray, Lorraine Newman, and Gilda Radner. Okay, so that would have just been fantastic. Saturday Night Live back then was really so brilliant. And the thing about Saturday Night Live is, again, most families didn't have VCRs. So you had to be awake on a Saturday night and home watching it in order to see it. You know, there were no YouTube clips the next day. So if people were talking about a brilliant sketch, you missed it. So I'm sure I would have wanted to watch that. Ooh, and then there is an ad. Modeling. It's a man's job. At Barbizon, men train for modeling or personal grooming by appearing before TV cameras. Okay, well, there you go. There's something for everybody here. There's also an episode of Charlie's Angels. The Angels investigate a pimp who has twice subjected a girl to verbal and physical abuse. And Farrah Fawcett is not in it anymore. Cheryl Ladd has replaced her. Oh, and I think that Kate Jackson has left as well because Shelley Hack is in it. So this is late Charlie's Angels. And then later at night on Johnny Carson, we have Jean Marsh, Robert Blake, and Impressionist Marilyn May. And then let's go on to Thursday afternoon. So on Merv Griffin, he has heavyweight boxing champ Joe Louis. He has Eartha Kitt, Andrea McCardle, singer Lou Carew, comic Morty Gunty, and Frisbee experts Mark Dana and Scott Zimmerman. Okay, so Joe Louis and Eartha Kitt need no introduction. They were both powerhouses in the day. Now, Andrea McCardle, you might not remember her name, but she was the very first Annie when Annie debuted on Broadway. So she was the first one to ever sing the song Tomorrow. You know, the sun will come out tomorrow. At this point, she was probably a little bit older. I don't know where this falls within the Annie timeline, but that's who she is, Andrea McCardle. She was the first Annie on Broadway. Now, if that's not your cup of tea on Mike Douglas, you can choose to watch that because there's James Earl Jones, again, brilliant, and Rue McClanahan, singer Terry DeSario, and KC and the Sunshine Band. And more, Jane Fonda's still doing aerobic exercises. So they're just way in the what's cool back then, right? You got Casey and the Sunshine Band. You've got Jane Fonda. Like, there's a lot to choose from there. And then, of course, you have lots of syndication to choose from. So, for the rest of the afternoon, you can go back and forth between different shows. So I will say, for instance, one of the syndicated shows that's on is MASH. So in this episode of MASH, this is the part 2 of when newcomer B.J. Honeycutt, played by Mike Farrell, is introduced to the MASH unit. And then at 7:30, the rerun of All in the Family is the episode when Sammy Davis Jr. visits the bunkers, which was really a classic episode. So in prime time, we have another installment of The Seekers with Randolph Mantooth, who I thought was adorable. Airing opposite of that is Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, which I don't think I ever watched. The Waltons. I don't know that I was a huge Waltons fan, but I think it was certainly a program we watched. It was very heartwarming, right? There was no violence. There was nothing terrible that was happening there. So in this episode, Olivia and Mary Ellen comforted. Oh my God, this is another one. Okay, forget it. Some of these storylines have some darkness in it, and you're drifting off to sleep. Let's just say the Waltons bring goodness to someone who needs it, and we'll leave it there. But opposite that, we've got Laverne and Shirley. I won't sing the song to you, but you know what it is. You know. The girls arrange for Edna's niece to join their old club, but are shocked to learn that the Angora Debs have passed from revelry to robbery. I have no idea what that means, but I'm sure I would have been watching that. Also, Benson follows that. So Jessica Tate of Soap, the governor's cousin, is such a success playing official hostess to a French dignitary that Benson is immediately battling rumors of a love nest at the mansion. I don't remember loving Benson, but I loved Soap, for sure. At 9 o'clock, we've got Quincy with Jack Klugman. Now, we for sure watched that. I think my dad really liked that. The circumstantial evidence is compelling, but Quincy doesn't buy Monahan's theory that a teenager... Okay, again, you know what? I'm not going to read these things. Again, my synopsis is something bad has happened to someone and Quincy investigates. Opposite that is Barney Miller and Hawaii... Okay, not Barney Miller in Hawaii Five-0. Hawaii Five-0 is airing. And then Barney Miller. I was not a Hawaii Five-0 fan. I did like Barney Miller. So in this episode, Wojo, Max Scale, is crestfallen when his pet parrot goes to the great parrot heaven. Okay, his parrot dies. And Harris's thinly disguised fiction about police work is about to be published if everyone agrees to sign a release form. Easy for me to say. And then after that is Soap, which just last year, my husband and I rewatched the whole thing. It was on one of the streaming services, and it is so funny. So Jodie and Corinne, Billy Crystal, and Diana Canova agree to help each other adjust to single parenthood. Billy, played by Jimmy Baio, is romancing his teacher in her apartment when her ex-husband comes home. Then at the 10 o'clock hour, there's a series called Kate Loves a Mystery with Kate Mulgrew. I don't remember this series, but I remember loving Kate Mulgrew because she was on Ryan's Hope. She played Mary, and she was wonderful on that. So I've always had a soft spot for her in my heart. For any of you who watch soaps, you know how that is when an actor who you've come to know and love on a soap opera is successful in other things. I don't know. I feel like it's someone I know being successful, which is really a weird connection. But here's what we would be watching for sure, which is Barnaby Jones with Buddy Epson. My parents liked that show as well. So again, something bad happens and he helps. There is on 2020, so that news magazine was around even back then, they're interviewing Mamie Eisenhower. And Barbara Walters is the interviewer, and the former First Lady discusses her life today and her relationship with the Nixons. And now I would think that's an interesting interview. Back then, I could have cared less. Okay, let's see who's on Johnny Carson. Marilyn Horne, Michael Douglas, and Kate Jackson. That's a good panel. And I think it's Michael Douglas, the actor, not Mike Douglas, the talk show host, just so we're clear. And now this brings us to Friday. So in the afternoon, Merv Griffin has Cheetah Rivera, who was a singer and dancer and actress, and Joey Travolta, who is John Travolta's brother and an actor. On Mike Douglas, with the co-hosts of Kate Jackson and Andrew Stevens, they have Cher, Bill Russell, and Gadget Man Stan Kahn and actress Ann Jeffries. So I may have watched that, I don't know. And then I thought maybe I'd share with you a couple of the ads for other programming. So there is an ad with Dorothy Hamill. She's a good skate. Dorothy Hamill cuts quite a figure tonight, teaming up with fellow athletes on Hollywood squares. We all loved Dorothy Hamill back then. You know, she just was adorable, and she had that cute hair that would flip when she would skate. We loved her. The Evening Magazine apparently is talking about Rock Hudson singing. Evening takes you to Rock's musical debut. I didn't know that. And then there is an ad for videotape cassettes. It says, a major improvement in home videotape, lower prices. A 2-hour beta cassette was $12.95, and a 4-hour VHS is $16.95. And it's at the Photomat store. That's expensive. Those were expensive back then. I had so many video cassettes. I had a whole practice of recording the shows that I loved, and then I wrote them on index cards so that I knew how to find them. I was very organized back then. I recorded all of the Remington Steele episodes, which hadn't come on the air yet, I think, at this point, but I loved Pierce Brosnan back then. And I don't know, a lot of other programs, some General Hospital episodes, I'm sure, and I would keep them well organized. So I had stacks and stacks of video cassettes. First Beta, because we started off with Betamax, and then we went to VHS. Okay, and then I guess Shirley Jones had a new series debuting. So Shirley Jones stars as Shirley. Meet the Millers. An attractive young widow, 4 kids with growing pains, and a dog called Oregano. Is Lake Tahoe ready for them? Join the shenanigans and find out. Shenanigans is a wonderful word. We should look for more opportunities to use that word. If any of you have seen The Heart of Dixie, you will know shenanigans is a word they use frequently in that series. So starring in this with her is Peter Barton, who, as I recall, was adorable, such a cute guy, definitely in the teen magazines back then. Rosanna Arquette, a young Rosanna Arquette was in this. Brett Schreier, Tracy Gold, Ann Duran, and John McIntyre. I don't have any recollection of watching that. There is also in prime time an all-star family feud with Richard Dawson. It's the cast of The Love Boat versus the cast of Soap, the cast of WKRP, and the cast of Real People. I have no idea if I would have watched that or not. So Friday night, let's see, I'm a teenager, Friday night. I might have been out with friends, unless I had stayed home and pretended I was sick, in which case I would be stuck at home. And there is a Godzilla movie, which Wes would have loved to watch back then because he loves the Godzilla movies. There is a Lawrence Welk episode, which I would have never watched, the debut of the Shirley Show. Incredible Hulk, which I know I've watched at some point but have no real memories of. All-Star Family Feud is probably what I would have been watching. You know, to see actors being themselves was a real treat back then. We didn't have access to actors 24/7 on Instagram and TikTok and everything else. So to see them being themselves was always a real treat. And then at 9 o'clock is the Rockford Files. For sure, we were watching the Rockford Files. My dad loved the show. My mom loved the show. And I enjoyed it as well. So Rockford is dismayed, then alarmed, when a cherished friend asks him to search for her fiancé, who's wanted for murder, who did a bad thing, or is suspected of doing a bad thing. Catherine Harold reprises her role as the blind Megan. I don't remember that episode, but I have seen many an episode of Rockford Files. Also airing opposite of that is Dukes of Hazzard. So Bo and Luke, played by John Schneider, and Tom Wopat join a demolition derby that's fronting for the smuggling racket they're suspected of operating. I know that I watched a few episodes of Dukes of Hazzard, but have no connection to that show beyond just perhaps watching them every once in a while. And then there's a made-for-TV movie. They remade the movie Topper. So Topper was a delightful movie from 1937 with Cary Grant and Constance Bennett. And we just watched it a few weeks ago, to the delight of my husband. He loves classic movies. And this, back in 1979, they had remade the movie with Kate Jackson and her husband, Andrew Stevens. So it says, now you see them, now you don't. A couple of good-time ghosts out to be angels have just 48 hours to turn long-suffering, super-square Cosmo Topper into a fun-loving guy who can really enjoy life. If they don't, there's hell to pay. And so Kate Jackson and Andrew Stevens are the fun-loving couple, and Jack Warden plays grumpy Cosmo Topper. Also airing on Friday evening is Dallas, which I know I watched back then. I don't know if I watched this episode, but I certainly watched Dallas. So Sue Ellen, played by Linda Gray, perks up for the first time since the birth of her baby when she meets an unattached cowboy at the rodeo. And then on Johnny Carson, we've got Tim Conway and actress Mary Margaret Hume. And Tim Conway was always funny on every single thing he ever did. That man could make me laugh. Always. But again, probably wasn't watching that. And then there's an episode of The Night Stalker, which I never would watch, but I just have to read you this headline. Headless biker on ride of death. The Night Stalker. Starring Darren McGavin. Okay, well, there you go. Wouldn't have watched it, but I just think that is a funny headline. And on the midnight special, for those of you who remember, the Commodores were hosting with ABBA, Frankie Valli, Captain and Tennille, and Nicolette Larson. So Commodores are singing Sail On, I love that song, and Midnight Magic. ABBA is singing Fernando and Dancing Queen. And Frankie Valli is singing Passion in Paris and Greece. I would have not watched that, but in retrospect, I can say that was probably fantastic television. Okay, and then that brings us to the end of the programming, but not to the end of the issue. Because as we get towards the end of TV Guide, we've got the television crossword. Now, I used to like to do this crossword because I could actually get the answers versus something like the New York Times crossword puzzle I was terrible at. But let's play a couple of the clues here. Let's see how good you and I would be at this TV guide crossword. So one across is evangelist Billy. I'll just fill in the answer. Graham. It would be Billy Graham. And then one down is actress Tammy. Now remember, this is 1979, and we now know her name starts with a G. I'll fill it in for you. Grimes, Tammy Grimes. I don't expect you to know that. Actually, you're asleep, so I'll just fill in the blanks for you. So I would feel relatively proud of myself because I would know answers, and who here doesn't want to feel smart, even if it's with a TV guide, right? And then we have here, okay, for sure you're going to know this one. Blank Hitchcock. Do you know that one? Alfred Hitchcock. See, I would get these answers and I would feel smart. It didn't matter that knowing this stuff really didn't mean much. You know, in other crossword puzzles, I did not feel smart. But when I could fill in Alfred Hitchcock, I would feel as if I had knowledge that was worthy of something. Here's another one, 14 down. Tournament of blank parade. Roses. Tournament of Roses parade. I would know that one. Oh, here's a good one. 29 across. Little House blank the prairie. On. It's on. Little House on the Prairie. I know that. He knows, I know that. So I would be so happy. I'd be like, I got that. So, 17 across. Euleen or Garfunkel. Now, you might not know Euleen, but how many Garfunkels do you know? Art. It's Art. Art Garfunkel. I know that one. So, I would love the TV guide crossword puzzle because I would feel very, very smart. And we all need a place in the world where we feel like we know relevant information. And for me, the world of television was that world for me. Okay, but I'm not going to go through the entire crossword puzzle for you because that would be even too sleepy for a sleep podcast. But perhaps I can give you one more. Let's see. Wait, let me look for a good one. Okay, 53 across. Mary Lou Henner's role in Taxi. Now, you might not remember this, so you might have to Google this. But I believe it was Elaine. Let me see if that's enough letters. E-L-A-I. That would be right. Elaine. See? There are things that my brain still remembers. So, together we would do very well in a TV guide crossword puzzle from 1979. Just be assured. There is a place in the world where we can collectively shine our wisdom. And then we have an article with a very dashing looking Robert Wagner. It says, Mr. Nice Guy drives a hard bargain. So he's 49 years old at this point. And then I have to share with you this ad because this is going to give you a sense of where we were in terms of technology back in 1979. It is a full-page ad for, I guess it would be a form of an alarm clock stereo, but it says the computer radio. At 6 a.m., it is smarter than you are. And so it's a digital radio. So it has the red digital numbers, if any of you remember what those would look like. The first entry shows 6 a.m. in the red digital numbers on the black background, introducing the Great Awakening from General Electric. For starters, it's smart enough to let you set the time directly, no flipping around the clock. So if any of you remember the alarm clocks where you had to flip the numbers, they would flip like little tiles. And so this one, you could just program it directly. Then it says 6:15. You can program it to change stations for you. So it will rock you to sleep with Strauss and switch to your new station and wake you up at 6:15. And then it says 7:53, a wake up number 2. Then it comes back to wake up your better half to Beethoven at 7:53, all with push button ease. And then it says alarm off. When you forget to set the alarm, the Great Awakening remembers to remind you. And then it says you can scan all the AM or FM stations by pressing a button, or to tune to one station, just punch in the frequency of your choice on the keyboard. You can also program up to 6 stations into the memory and recall any one of them with a touch of a finger. For a little extra sleep, press the snooze bar. It lets you sleep an extra minute or an extra hour. You tell the memory how long. The Great Awakening is so smart it even tells you when you've made an error, but it's easy to correct. Just press a button. So this thing looks like a monstrosity. It looks really big. It has a giant keyboard that looks like an old phone keyboard, but it has more buttons on it. But that's where we were in terms of technology. This was the latest and greatest. I have no idea how much it cost at the time, but it's fairly impressive. And if you're wondering how much things cost back then, there is an ad for Kmart, 20% off girls' sportswear sale. So pre-washed jeans were on sale for $5.57. So again, remember how the VHS tape was $13 or $14, so you could get kids' jeans for $5.57. Short sleeve shirts were $3.17. A ski jacket was $12.77. So certainly the price of the VHS tape was huge compared to clothing, right? And then we close out with TV Q&A. So these are always questions about televisions. So how many TV sets can be attached to the same antenna? Is it illegal to tape a copyrighted show at home for viewing later? So this is the answer. A federal court in Los Angeles recently ruled that it is legal, but it is definitely illegal to sell the tape or charge admission to see it. See, back then we were concerned about that. And then there's just it says TV teletype, so there's a couple of other little stories. This one is interesting. It says, now that the existing episodes of The Paper Chase have been optioned for rebroadcast by WTTW, the Chicago Public TV station, John Houseman may be teaching his law class on PBS. About the jump to public TV, Houseman told us, I'm tired of having people come up to me to say how much they miss Paper Chase. Here was a series that was critically praised and had an audience of 24 million people, yet it's not viable on commercial TV. That was a fantastic show. I remember The Paper Chase, and we would absolutely watch it. I wonder if that's available anywhere, because I would watch that again for sure. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of that issue of TV Guide. So I hope that we have been good company for you. The Angels, TV Guide, the Wayback Machine. I hope that you're drifting off into the sweetest of dreams. I'm so deeply grateful for you. You are a blessing here in this world, and I look forward to connecting again soon. So thank you so much. I send you blessings, I send you gratitude. And I'll be bringing you another episode in just a few days. And in the meanwhile, there are over 100 episodes in the archive that you can listen to. So thank you so much. I love you.